glorious week, busy, but just really great, amazing things happening. How about you?
Yeah, I've been doing pretty good, like you, but you talked about it getting warm. Here it got in DC, excuse me, it got kind of chilly. Chilly mean it went down to the 60s a couple of nights. And for me, I think that's a trick. My body doesn't do well. It's summer, so it should be hot. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
And
right.
so it was kind of tricky, and I even started getting some sniffles and jump right on that. But I think it's all due to the weather. But all in all, I've been having a great week. And again, as always, I'm just here, happy to be with you another week, man.
Exactly. Happy to be with everyone who's here. There's already people chiming in the way that they do to let us know that they're here with us. Hey,
Oh, is
Monica.
that?
Monica's here already.
Hey, Lady Monica, thank you for joining us tonight. And again, let me just say, while everybody's still coming in here, Vash and I have had the opportunity to read this amazing book before it hits. I mean, before it's available on September the 6th, but you will be able to pre-order it, and the author is here to tell you how you can do that. But Vash, this week, I mean, of course, there's been a lot going on. And so I just thought that, I would take a different approach to just talking about something today. This is not a dish, but I read the news that Tevin Campbell came out.
Were you looking at a newspaper from 1980 something? I mean, that he did that a long time ago, didn't he?
If I'm not mistaken, again, no tea, no shade.
Right.
But I could have sworn I read that someplace else like 10 years ago.
At least Tevin has been out for a long time.
I thought, but it made headlines, and and that's what made me ask you. I think I called you. I said, Vash, do people still use the term coming out?
And yeah, they do. There's like National Coming Out Day,
Okay, well,
it's October 11th. As a matter of fact, it's coming up really quickly.
Well, maybe that's why he did it. But
you know what? I will come out again too. Alvin, I have something to tell you, and I hope you will love me just the same.
I'm gonna love you the same. please come out again. Okay. No, seriously. There's so much going on. We do our Let's Get Newsy shows, and there's a lot going on. But I didn't want to get too involved with everything that's going on, because we can do a whole show of just what's going on. To be honest with you, it's just so much. So I just want to. I'm ready to get into talking to this author about this amazing book that has really touched me, and I am not joking. I felt like it was me he was writing about as during points of the book.
Wow,
really? It was that intense. So if we can go ahead and make this introduction and get this wonderful guy in the house, I'm ready to go with it.
Right on. I mean, it's an amazing piece of fiction. And, I know it has touched you in many, many amazing ways. As a matter of fact, after talking to you, all I could hear was Pull Up to My Bumper by Chris Jones. And we will talk to Cary and see if that actually fits into the soundtrack that he has in mind for his film version of this movie. But I can't wait. I think this is going to be an amazing conversation, and I think people will really appreciate it. And yes, Monica, we can talk.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Cory Allan Johnson is an author, an activist, and Africanist raised in Brooklyn, New York. A public health and HIV specialist, Cary is currently the country director for Population Services International in Burundi, Central Africa. A longtime innovator and national and international queer politics and cultural activism. He was a founder of several groundbreaking organizations, including Blackheart Collective, Gay Men of African Descent, Other Countries, and the International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the He Said stage, Mr. Cory Allan Johnson.
Hey.
Hey, Cary. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Good to see you guys. Good to be here.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, okay, never say that you can't get up to do anything, because Cary it is 1:00 in the morning where he is. Okay. So don't, when it's time for you to do something and we need you here, don't talk about time, because Carrie's a perfect example of what it takes when you make a commitment. So Carrie, thank you for joining us tonight, man. Thank you.
Like I took 2 naps, one earlier and then one just a couple hours ago.
That's hilarious. So how would you say glad to be here in the language spoken where you are?
You know what? I do not speak Kirundi, which is the sort of mother tongue of Burundi, but in French, which is the sort of the national language, I would say bonsoir et je suis très content d'être ici avec vous.
Enchanté.
Merci, pareillement.
Si. Okay. Oh no, we. We. Thank you, Carrie. Carrie, do me a favor and take about 90 seconds to tell our audience a bit about yourself. And I know we're going to talk about it, but if you could just briefly tell us about the story world you've created with Desire Lines.
Sure. First, thanks so much for having me. This is one of the first interviews I've done, and in preparation for the release of the book, and it's good to be with brothers, and especially when I see the work that you guys are doing, through media in the community. So thank you for having me. The book and me sort of sort of came of age. My narrator and myself both came of age in the 1980s. In New York, and as I think we're going to talk about, and I'm sure you heard about, and those were trying times, and well, myself, I was a Peace Corps volunteer myself in Congo, and that sort of launched me on a career in public health, and I have worked in the United States and in Africa for most of my life now, most of my career, and I am currently living in Burundi in Central Africa, but I've worked in a whole bunch of countries, including Haiti, and pretty much throughout Africa. And I saw in one of your previous shows you sort of stood in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, Alvin, and I thought you even had on the blue and the yellow, and I thought that was pretty cool. And I had a chance to work. What? Yeah, I had a chance to work in Ukraine during the sort of populist uprising, and so I've had some wonderful opportunities to see a lot in the world, and and in my community, working in the Black gay community in New York and in the Northeast, and so I've tried to give back, and the book is another example of that. Probably the most personal example of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems so clear that there's a lot of you in it, but we're going to get to some of that. So your book has actually been described as riveting. I'm going to say steamy, gripping, raw, unflinching, and right. Someone said, and I'm going to quote, unputdownable. How would you describe Desire Lines?
Those all sound good to me. Like buyable.
See, this is why we ask these questions.
Oh gosh. How would I describe it? Okay. The book is about 3 things. It's about friendship. And the ways in which friendship, gets us through, and whether that be the friendships with our sort of our buddies, our male buddies, or whether that's the friendship with close female friends, of which I've had many, and which the character holds as very important in his life. And but you mentioned steamy, and like none of the reviewers thus far have said steamy, but I love that, because I in the 1980s, and I hope today, sex is a huge part of our lives, and I think as as queer men, for myself and hopefully others, have the space to sort of embrace that kind of sexuality, that choices around sexuality, and you know, and so I didn't run away from writing about sex and love. And you know, in the I think you know the very first chapter of the book is set in the Rambles in Central Park, and you know, I rewrote that chapter several times because I said, no, you know what, you don't want your character like having anonymous sex in the first chapter of the book, and then I said, why not? That was part of the experience in the 80s, part of the experience for some people today, and it was real. So at one point I wrote the chapter, and he has this experience as he meets these guys and he leaves the park, and then I said that's not the truth. And so I think what the book has been described as unflinching, and I didn't flinch when I wrote it. And I hope that I'm not going to flinch now. It's interesting because writing the book is one thing, and you're in your study and you're writing, sharing it. But then putting it into the world, having people talk about it, is another. And I hope that I'm not going to flinch as I put the book into the world.
Well, if you do flinch, I hope it has something to do with you applauding yourself. Okay, I hope does flinching come with applauding yourself because you or pearl clutching, because you have just done a tremendous job, and I know Vash had just asked you to do or have used words from other people to describe your book. I saw it as a coming out story, also, which was very important to me in certain chapters of your book. And my original question, to be honest with you, before you started talking, was going to ask you, why did you pick this moment during the onset of the AIDS epidemic to tell this story? So I'm going to go ahead. You kind of answered it. So I want to ask it again because I want to go someplace else with it. So why did you use this moment in time during the AIDS epidemic to tell your story?
The idea of coming of age at a moment when the belief, practically the sure knowledge that you and all your friends were going to die, is a chilling way to come of age. And it had tremendous impact on the men of my era. And I think that story hadn't been told up until now. There've been some wonderful books written about the HIV crisis. The band played on. Andrew Holleran's Dancer from the Dance. I could just list a bunch of them, but none of them have been written from the perspective of African American gay men. And we've been sort of like, you take something like Angels in America, an amazing piece of literature. We're sort of, ancillary characters, and I thought that the experience of HIV and the entire experience of the 80s, was particular for Black gay men. We did not have the support systems, that our white brethren had. The GMHCs weren't created for us, so there was a whole different, sort of hysteria almost that we experienced as a community, and these response mechanisms that we had to build, and we did. And some of us sank, some of us swam, but we survived. And I think that that story, that there's a whole generation, my generation, of Black gay men who who had a life experience that people don't know. And I that was for my first book. It was essential for me that was the story that I needed to tell.
And I thoroughly appreciate that. We hear people a lot now talking about the trauma that children are experiencing having lived through, 2 years of COVID.
Right.
What not a lot of people talk about is the trauma that a lot of gay men experienced living through the whole AIDS experience. A generation of gay men were lost. And a lot of, there's a gap. There's a complete gap in terms of everything, in terms of how to behave as a gay person, how to look after each other as gay people, et cetera, that are lost, that I believe your book does a lot to try to bridge. And I just thank you for doing that.
Well, thanks. Statistically, most of us survived, but it feels, I mean, the loss, it was almost like, there was this HBO series, The Leftovers, where, these, 1/10 of the population just gets, sort of disappears one day. And, I liken it to that, though it was not a sort of a spontaneous disappearance. It was ugly, it was painful, it was disastrous, but this, and there's a chapter in the book called Vanishing, where the narrator is in a nightclub. Which nightclub is it? Midtown 43. And I use real places in the book. And, he's had a bit much to drink, he's had a bit much to sniff, and so it becomes a little bit of magical realism, and people in the nightclub who he knows, start sort of disappearing just so spontaneously. And that's kind of how it felt. You would not see someone for a while, and then wonder where they were, and then hear that they, had gone. And but still, the thing is, you have to live. You have to keep going. I mean, and we did. Not always in the healthiest of ways, but we kept, moving, and trying to make lives for ourselves as young men.
We did that. We did that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned that you used real places. I mean, because you take us on a journey through what it was like in the 80s, being Black and gay, in a major city. Did you do research, or is this based on your real life experience?
Yeah, I did research. Up in those nightclubs and up in those bathhouses and up in the brambles. I did the research.
You were the person with the book that I saw?
All right.
with the journal, just like
I sort of just kept mental notes.
Okay.
Those are the places in which we they were for sex, for sure, but they were also places where we met people who became our friends. I mean, the whole concept of a fuck buddy, somebody who you meet in a sexual context, right, and who you that's how you get to know them, and the sex part may peter out, but you got a good buddy, and like my favorite characters in the book. I mean, I love Regina. I love many of the characters, but my two favorite characters are Jeff and Lil Pete, who are the narrator's bar buddies, because and it's they know each other only in the context of the club, and that doesn't. That is not meant to sound like it is not intimate.
No. Right.
Exactly. We had bar buddies, right? Like that was your bar buddy, like, and you were good friends. You met them, you banked on them. You saw them sometimes more than you saw your family.
That's right.
Absolutely. That's right. That's and right. they meant just as much to you, you know.
Well, you talked about your favorite character, and being Little Pete. And the other gentleman in the bar, huh? Yeah, well, I fell in love with Mr. Zogby,
Oh,
Everybody needs a Mr. Zogby in their life.
oh,
That
for sure.
character was like the most, I mean, he stood out the most to me because he was a mentor and a protector at the same time. And then for the narrator to have to turn around and take care of Mr. Zogby after meeting him and becoming his caretaker and friend. Did you have a Mr. Zogby in your life?
I certainly did. I had a couple, I mean, teachers, are the unsung heroes of our country. And, they don't get nearly the credit or the money or anything they deserve. I did have a Mr. Zaki, and, people who know me, and I wrote the book partially for him because he died very early in the epidemic, and he needs to be remembered. But it's interesting, Alvin, because really the narrator, doesn't take care of Zogby. He abandoned Zogby, because the the horror and the terror of walking someone to their death,
Right.
it's just too much for him. And, he runs away from that responsibility. And, it is, uh, and it's something he pays penance for through all of his shame and guilt that he has, as he moves forward, in his life.
Wow. And you know what? You- when I said that he took care of him, it's funny. Thank you for clarifying that for me because and now that I'm looking back on the character, thank you for clarifying that for me. And I just looked at it like it must have been really hard. First of all, my partner of 15 years, passed of AIDS years ago, and so I know what it was like to see him, just
You
his whole see him decline. So and to have to go through that, even though it was my partner, a different type of character. But I'm glad you clarified that he did abandon him to a certain degree. I agree with you. Yeah,
but
yeah,
but you didn't. And see,
yeah.
that's the thing. And that's what I think is wonderful about novels, or is that everybody who picks it up and reads it is going to read something different into that character,
Right.
or into that experience. They're going to read in, it's what's on the page, but they're going to read in like what their own life experience was.
Mhm.
And sounds to me like Alvin King showed up, when he needed to show up,
Oh, baby,
right?
Alvin King did show up. Yes, yes, he
Right,
did.
and that's
Thank you.
thank you. That,
Thank you.
Carrie, I have a question.
yes.
What was the most difficult chapter for you to write?
Hmm. Ooh. I mean, I could say things, but they wouldn't be true. Um, like I could say the rehab chapter, because I mean that stuff is hard to talk about sometimes. But frankly, I think but frankly, that that came pretty easily. And can I just clarify that there is a lot of overlap between my life and the experiences of the narrator, but the book is a novel. It's fiction. It's not a memoir. There are places that deviate substantially, from my own life, and so I don't want to get in Oprah trouble where I call something a memoir and Oprah calls you to the carpet. When Oprah has me on her show, it has to be all right, all
Yes.
good. Um, but I think that to answer, I think the chapter is about my family, which I drew from my own family experience. The chapter is about
Mhm.
the family, because even though it's a novel, and I say to people, okay, this is not my mother, this is not my father, this is not, um, and because the book is written in the first person, it is very hard for people to make that separation when they read it. And I think I, I wanted to be fair, because our relationship with our parents and with our siblings they're frauds. You know, they're never all one thing or another. I mean, sometimes they're all one thing, and usually that's when they're one thing, they're usually bad. But for most of us, I think those relationships are, you know, have both, you know, both very loving, particularly for Black folks, loving, powerful, supportive, you know, experiences with our parents, but then also the ways in which our parents knew how to love us, which was, you know, often using shame as a tool to, you know, keep us, to teach us about the world, you know, being overly hard on us, the whole kind of you got to be twice as good kind of thing. So I think those chapters were hard because when I was writing about the narrator's family, and of course you have to, you know, write about, you know, the family of origin, the home experience, what made this person into who he or she is. I wanted to do it with a fairness, but a fairness that did not feel like patronizing, that did not feel like, oh, he's just trying to be balanced, but that, you know, like parents, mothers, fathers, they're never one thing or all one thing or another. They're loving us, but they're also trying to protect us, and that can be painful. So yeah, those were the tough chapters, and then also, you know, I mean, the chapter towards the end, you know, when he has the narrator has the experience with his dealer, which I won't, you know, reveal anything more about except to say, honey.
Yeah, you all need to get the book for that. Well,
We have a no spoiler deal here on the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Vash just asked you about what was the most challenging, but one of my favorite chapters was chapter 5, Paradise Regained. There is no way. There is no way you could not have been standing in the middle of that room. I've been to Paradise Garage, and that chapter made me put on the song that you mentioned in that chapter. I had to find it on Google because I had never heard it before. It was
Which one?
It was a song that I have it in my notes. I don't want to reach over. But it was a song that kind of got the night started before you and before Steve and the narrator started dancing. Right.
It's the flute solo. Harlem River Drive you're talking about.
It is the flute solo.
Harlem River Drive.
I had to put that song on in my house while I was reading it because that chapter, you wrote that chapter every word for word, and I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Alvin B. King, you don't look old enough to have been up in there when I was up in there, but I will say that song, it's Bobby Humphrey's Harlem River Drive. And it's one of, if you're a garage head or if you're from that era, you know, that was a warm-up song. That was, you know, what Larry would play, you know, when the floor was still empty. But it's an amazing song, right?
That was my favorite chapter, and thank you. Flowers will be coming to you soon. Okay, for that compliment. So thank you for that. That's all I'm gonna say to that. Okay.
Once upon a time, not long ago, I too was a hoe, and I can appreciate that chapter.
You two were a what? Repeat that, please.
A hoe.
You two were a please. Okay, great.
And it's and I'm just watching Norman backstage, just going. We keep getting notes. We keep getting private notes that this is a family show.
Okay, right.
We have to reel it in. So you've already talked about some of the two characters that you liked, and you also talked about it being a little difficult to write about the people that were sort of your parents.
Right. The parents, right.
But who was your favorite character to write about?
Well, like I said, Lil Pete, I want to date. I mean, I wrote that character. I mean, physically, and his jocularity, his kind of, I mean, he just makes me happy when I would sit down and write him, and he's the character that refers to the narrator as deep thoughts. And so I just think Little Pete is just fun. But how can I say anything but, answer your question with anything other than Regina? I mean,
Regina.
Regina.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean,
we all need a good Judy.
You need a good Judy, and you probably need multiple Judys throughout your life, and but you need one, because I think the relationship with women, and I'll say straight women in particular, is it's like no other relationship. I mean, and through thick and through thin, all the trials and tribulations that the narrator goes through, Regina is there for him until she says at a certain point, "That's enough. Like, I'm out, because you're going through too much. I'm trying to be here for you." And because, see, Regina is pretty healthy as a, and that's why I like her, because she's healthy. She's not this codependent kind of person who's just like, oh, whatever you do, I'm going to come in and pick up the pieces. That's a sort of a way of using friends, I think, and using women in particular. But she's steady, and when he's ready for the help she can offer, she comes back into his life, and and she goes through her own sort of arc, and right. She goes through her own arc. She's biracial, and so she's grappling with issues of trying to be Black. This was before we Black people were allowed to be a whole bunch of things. Now Black people can be sort of everything. Right. But right. But in the 1980s, not so much. I mean, if there was a pretty strict notion of what you could be, how you could talk, how you could dress, how you could do your hair as a Black woman, and Regina didn't fit that. She's like between two worlds, and she's struggling with it, and this father and this mother, and so they're on parallel tracks, but with on around a different set of issues.
This brings me to this, because you just really are touching on it. The name of the book is Desire Lines.
Right.
And it has so many different meanings to so many different people in this book.
That's beautiful, Vash. Go ahead. Keep talking.
Well, I mean, was this intentional? I mean, did the name come from that? Like, talk to me about that.
Like intentional. Yeah, I meant to do that.
Oprah will love that answer.
This stuff kind of happens over time, and sort of, oh wow, look at that. I was this. Here's the thing. Like my publisher, who's Don Weiss at Cary Books, he'd been reading drafts of the book, and he said to me, I didn't know what a desire line was until I read, it was explained in a very late chapter. And then I said, oh, that's not good. I don't want people sort of being confused about what it means. So it's actually now described because I understand as a concept maybe some people don't know. So it's now in the first page of the book. A desire line, if for any of your listeners who don't know, if you're in a park, or it's a path that people create with their feet, right? So there are the cement walkways, and then there are the paths that people sort of track, through the grass, right? And those are called desire lines. And I was in a park one day, 10 years ago, and I saw a sign that said, avoid desire lines. Because the people who run the parks, they don't want you to make those paths, right? They want you to stay on the straight and narrow. But the truth of the matter is, we don't stay on none of us well, some of us do, but I don't.
But that's, but that's in life in general, right? Like, this is what we're grappling with right now in society, is that we have a bunch of people who are trying to tell us, stay on this path, think only this way, don't teach this. We want to keep you here. And the desire lines are driving what is becoming the evolution of the human spirit.
That's it. And that's a beautiful way of putting it. And that is it, right? Gosh, they're driving the human spirit, and and so they drive you to go get this thing that you want, be it truth, freedom, love, self-actualization, self-realization. it's not this way, it's this way.
This way,
And
right.
your time, you don't have unlimited time, so go get it. Now there's a downside to desire lines,
Right.
too, is it does sort of damage, it shakes things up, it changes the structures, things damage, and you can pay a price from having to, from walking your desire when society is telling you stay on the path.
You
Well,
stopped yourself from saying damaged 3 times in that sentence.
Okay. Did I? No.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Right. Well, I think it all comes out in the wash.
Okay.
If we, well, my narrator, for example, his fall, from grace is around addiction, and he doesn't stay on the path, right? He takes this deviation, and that's another critical part of the book, and I hope people will, whatever experiences readers have with drugs and alcohol, but he, and those are very painful paths. They can kill you. But if you're able to find your way back, not necessarily onto the straight and narrow, but onto your own path, onto your own desire line, right? Then, you can survive and you can thrive.
Well, Carrie, let me ask you this question, because we do want to ask you a few personal questions that I know that our viewers want to hear about you. What do you hope readers will take away from your novel?
Man, it's happening already. When I finished it, I was like, is this any good? I mean, I knew that some of the writing was good, but did it all hold together? And when people like you tell me you were on the dance floor, with the character, that you were moved, it reminded you, or it brought you back to your experience with your lover. That's all I want. I want people to go, wow. That's all I want. That was your question, right? What is it that I?
Yeah. What would you like readers to take away from your story, or after reading your book? I mean, because I know how I felt, and I can tell you what you just said. Wow, I have the wow factor right now.
Yeah.
And I've been telling people, first of all, I didn't know that I was privileged or privy to have read the copy, because I've been telling people you got to get it. I'm gonna buy it for you, and I will. But the wow factor's there. And I've been trying to spend time with myself to say, is it because it's personal? Trying to, come up with reasons why this wow factor is here, other than, Cary, you have just written a darn good book, and the wow factor is there. And every word was meticulously written. I went through the chapters like, wow, this man is really taking me on a journey. And so the wow factor is there.
That's really kind of you to say. And there's a poetry in the book, and I was a poet at one point, back in the day, and so I think that's still part of my writing. But I had to do a lot of editing to make sure that it was also still prose, that the prose flowed and it didn't go off too far into being too poetic. But I think the poetry can convey the emotion of the period, or the emotion of his loss and his angst and his will to survive. So I don't know. I guess what I want people to take from it is that there was this period, and there was this generation, and they had an experience, and it was painful. It was terribly frightening. We lost many people along the way, but many people survived, and we survived, mainly through our good friends and through the people that loved us, family, who just, kept us, from falling into the abyss.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that you're going to be on a tour promoting Desire Lines. As a matter of fact, we are going to bring up your little tour dates. Let's do this.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
where are you going to be? Talk to people so they can come out and see you.
Sure. A few dates in New York. Greenlight Books on the September 8th, and then in Philadelphia at Giovanni's Room. Then in San Francisco at Fabuloso Books. Finishing up, stop in Atlanta, and then finishing up in my favorite city, Atlanta, at Karis Books on the 23rd of September.
Fantastic. And we are going to put into the chat your website so that people, let me stop this, so that people can actually go ahead and go to your website, find your appearances, and find a way to come out and see you. At these appearances, are you going to be reading from the book, or are you just going to be, what are you going to be doing?
I'm going to be reading from the book. They're all hosted by, sort of brilliant writers who are going to be hosting me. And so I'll read from the book for a bit. Don't worry, it won't be too long. And then I'll, we'll do some discussion between me and the host, take some questions from the audience, and then sign anyone's, book who would like me to.
Well, I did look at your website, and I saw that DC was there, but TBD. And I'm going to say, if you come to DC, you just make sure that you reach out to Alvin King. I need to make sure that I'm there. Hopefully I'm in town and available, because I'm going to make my way to meet you and to attend the book signing if that comes to fruition. But I just want to say thank you for being with us today, Cary. Thank you, my friend.
You guys are great, and I'm sure we're going to meet face to face.
I'm going to try to come to your event in Philadelphia.
Thanks, Vash.
Yeah, I would love to see you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You're welcome. Well, don't go away. We're going to bring you right back. But ladies and gentlemen, please clap for our special guest, Mr. Cory Allan Johnson. Wow. That was a wonderful interview. Thank you,
fantastic.
Vash.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we have been wanting to do this segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back with it. Our segment called We See You, where we recognize and host on our show and feature a Black-owned and operated business. Our next guest, he has launched Harlem Boy Collection, which is a culmination of the artistic vision of our featured guest, Mr. Richard Leek. It is a vision of design that is urban in its aesthetic and sophisticated in its approach. It is stepped up in the influences of his childhood and what vibrant fashion and vast environment landscape that is New York City, his hometown. His work is inspired by the movement and whimsy of dance and by strong lines and symmetry of classic architecture. He interprets all of these influences in a way that is accessible to all. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to our stage the owner, CEO, operator of, of Harlem Boy Collection, Mr. Rich Leek. Hey, Rich.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I can't begin to tell you how wonderful this feels.
Well, thank you for being here, and congratulations on your new launch of Harlem Boy Collection. And I cannot wait to share more about it with our audience. So, Rich, do me a favor and tell us what is behind the Harlem Boy Collection, and how did this brand come about?
Well, I've been an artist since I was a child. I always loved to create, but I didn't really embrace it until maybe about 15 years ago, where I just said, you know what, you're an artist. And so I just started creating different things, whether it was digital illustrations, whether it was painting, photography. And for the time being, I really didn't do anything with it. And then when I started thinking about, this could be featured on clothing. This could be, I can find a way to turn my passion into a way to support my family and take care of myself. And that's what my entrepreneurial journey has really been about. How do I take my different passions and find a way to make them make money and support me?
Okay. Well, and herein lies Harlem Boy Collection. Thank you. Okay.
That's fantastic. Now you're actually wearing one of your pieces,
Yes,
and we have your website. We're going to bring up your website because I'd like to know, like, what are some of, like, take us through some of your collection.
Okay, sure.
Right. I mean, this is your website. It's harlemboycollection.com.
Correct.
We've got some of your featured products.
And so Harlem Boy Collection is, I like to kind of think about it as a department store.
Okay.
So there are many different product lines. We have HB women, we have footwear, we have bags, we have swimwear, t-shirts, women's wear, home goods, leather bags, not leather bags, eyewear, anything that I can figure out a way to incorporate my artwork, my vision onto the product, onto a quality product. That's what I want to bring to the collection. This particular design, I call it Electric Kiss, comes in wonderful jewel tone colors, sapphire, gold, ruby, mandarin. That's one of my signature things. I love jewel.
This is the shirt here.
Yes.
The shirt that he has on here. Okay.
Yeah, I think this is actually the shirt that he has on right now.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And as you can see, the women's wear collection, again, swimwear. There's going to be an underwear line for both men and women. And then the other thing is that I'm trying to create things that are inclusive of every size. Right. So my goal is to next adjust my designs to work for all different body types.
So Rich, let me ask you, how would you define your price points?
I have something for everyone. We have vegan leather bags that can be purchased for $40 or $50, and canvas bags for $40 or $50. But we also have Napa leather bags that, the duffel bag, for example, which features my signature mud cloth pattern, which I call One Nation Under God. And you can see it right there. There's a duffel bag as well as several women's bags that is made out of Napa leather and retails for about $600. So the price range, it goes across the gambit.
Okay.
Something for everyone.
Definitely affordable.
Yes.
So I know that when I actually saw that you had launched your brand, I got the impression that you were working through COVID to get to the point where you could launch your brand. What was it like preparing your brand and trying to open it during COVID when, people were out of work and you still had that creative mind to get what you needed to have done? How challenging was that for you?
Well, the challenge in that is, obviously you have to be able to invest money to create certain things. Whether that be building the website. Luckily for me, I'm building it. I'm a graphic artist and web designer myself, so I was able to do a lot of things that somebody might have to pay someone else to do. I'm able to do that myself. But the investment of that of the finances during a time when, we're all struggling and prices are going up and people are not able to spend the money that they want. But you approach it from a point of faith. You approach it from a point of faith. I loved listening to the previous part of your interview, of your program, where because that book is about my life story. I came of age in New York in the 80s and 90s as a young Black gay man. I may have been a little too young for some of the clubs, but a lot of the things you guys were talking about, I experienced. And yet here I am, 52, going on 53 years, and I'm thriving. I found a way to make it work. I found a way to build a life, build a business, build businesses, have a home, have a family, all of those things. So again, you operate on faith. And I think that's something that came out of coming of age during that time.
You kind of touched on this. You said you have multiple businesses. The Harlem Boy Collection is clothing, but you also do other things.
Yes, sir.
You do travel, you do furniture, you do some media stuff. Talk to us about all that you do.
All that.
Yes. Well, Harlem Boy Ventures Properties is my LLC. That's the parent company that holds all of my various enterprises. Harlem Boy Media Design is my graphic and web design business, which is my first baby. That's my firstborn. I started that business approximately 13 or 14 years ago. But Alvin, and you may remember when the previous incarnation was RML Consulting, where we worked on the White Attire Affair in DC together.
I was going to say, you just took me back almost 20 years. I produced my first white party here with Lettucey, was our artist, and
I still have photos from it.
You did the graphics for that. When you said it, it brought back memories. So
yes,
okay, all right.
And, that so that after a lot of years, I have become a sought after and successful designer. I've done work for Coca-Cola. My company is now the director of digital content for a website called Harlem America, which is a digital network as well as a digital online magazine. I've done, and that has allowed me to do web pages for various celebrities that are included in that website, like Felicia Rashad, Valerie Pettiford. The list could go on and on. Then my second child, which I started about 2 years ago, is bookitblack.com. I love to travel. Haven't been able to do it as much because of COVID. But Book It Black is, the slogan is travel more, spend less, but always book it black. And my goal for that company is to eventually do curated travel for Black gays and lesbians to various parts of the world. I think one of the trips that I would love to do is like take 20 to 30 couples to Mykonos, in a summer, where we just go and have a week and a curated trip where we can all just be ourselves and travel amongst one another, but really get into the cultures.
Well, I might have to get a couple, but you go. I might have to get a second, but you make sure you keep me on that on that list, because I'm sure I can make that work. Okay.
I will definitely. And then Harlem Boy Collection, which is the clothing line, which again, I've always been into fashion. I've always tried to have something different. I don't like to look like everyone else, but at the same time, I'm not out there. So I wanted something that reflected what I would wear. Part of my line is the KET by Harlem Boy Collection, which is a partnership that I've done with Kevin Edward Taylor, who is a pastor in Newark and a former colleague of mine from BET. He's a wonderful interviewer. Alvin, I'm pretty sure you know him.
I do know of him. I definitely know of him. Yes, I do. Yes.
And the tagline for this is share the inspiration. Kevin comes up with the quotes, I come up with the artwork, and we've done some wonderful t-shirts, mugs, home goods, that bags that just kind of reflect the positivity that he brings to his ministry. The shirt you're looking at right there comes in several. I desire what I deserve, and I deserve what I desire. That shirt comes in a lot of different colors, as well as the rainbow on blast version that you're seeing right there. But again, it's just a way of bringing out some positivity and share the inspiration. That's what I try to tell people.
Well, I told people when we came on that we were bringing on an entrepreneur, a business owner, but as I told you, he is a quadruple threat, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to put up your Harlem Boy Collection website page again, because that's how people can contact you
Yes.
and get in touch with Rich. But I want to say thank you for being on our show, Rich. Congratulations to all that you're doing. And I want everybody to go out and support him because he is a Black-owned business and he is doing the darn thing. So congratulations,
one
my
last
brother.
thing, Alvin.
Yes.
And this is something that I tell people all the time.
Mhm.
Support is a verb, but there's so many different ways to support. Whether you see something you like there and you want to shop, you can shop. But it's also support to share it with someone else. Send, if you see the ad, share it with someone who might like it, even if you don't. That's how we can support one another. And I thank you guys for the support in this new venture for me. Thank you so much.
You are thank you again, Rich. Thank you, and thank you for those kind words. Can we bring Carrie back on the stage before we go? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is we are near the end of our show, and before we go, I want to say thank you again to our special guest, Cory Allan Johnson, for being here, and congratulations on your new book, Desired Lines, and to Mr. Rich Lalique. Congratulations to you on the launch of Harlem Boy Collection and all your other endeavors. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, on August the 26th, Vash and I are starting a new series that we've been working on called Aging While Black. And we will have a panel of Black men over 50, and we're going to have an open discussion. And again, it's a new series, so it has the potential to grow and grow and grow. But tune in next week for our inaugural show on this topic, and we promise you will not be disappointed. Our words of the week this week: desire is a starting point for all achievement, not a hope, not a wish, but a keen pulsating desire which transcends everything. And that is a quote by Napoleon Hill. So once again, we want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you to our special guests, and we look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode of He Said.
He said.
He said. He said.
That's it. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great weekend, and again, thank you for being here tonight.
God bless.
Okay.